Whether you're designing an experiment or evaluating one, you need to understand whether the results are valid. What even is validity? And what sort of validity should you be aware of? The purpose of scientific experimentation is to be able to say we know with a high degree of confidence that A causes B. We know that being bitten by a werewolf turns the victim into a werewolf. How do we know this? Because we ran 4,000 trials and every time the werewolf bit the participant, that's what happened. Let's break down the concept of validity and use a classic psychological experiment as our example. In 1963, Stanley Milgram shocked his fellow psychologists by demonstrating that perfectly ordinary people would murder a stranger if instructed to by an authority figure. This landmark obedience to authority study is a great one to pick apart when thinking about validity. By and large, there are two umbrella categories within the overarching concept of validity. That's internal validity and external validity. When considered, these factors help us to determine whether a study's results are indeed valid or true. Internal validity looks at what's happening within the study. Does the study test what it says it's testing? If all of Milgram's participants completed the experiment at midnight after fasting all day, would the results definitely be a consequence of the authority figure's instructions, or was tiredness a factor? Or hunger? To control for these potential confounding variables, the researchers tested participants at different times of the day, so they were able to say with increased confidence that their independent variable, the authority figure with his instructions, was indeed causing the resultant participant behaviours, electrocuting the victim, our dependent variable. Controlling confounding variables helps researchers improve the internal validity of their research. Milgram's study, however, lacks a different type of internal validity: mundane realism. Psychological studies want to answer the question of how people behave in the real world, and therefore it's critical for studies to be designed with mundane realism. They need to mirror real life as much as possible. If the situation in the laboratory is too unusual, we might not be learning about how people behave in the real world, just how they behave in a weird, unnatural experimental lab. When evaluating Milgram's study, Perry in 2012 found that many of Milgram's participants had been skeptical about whether the electric shocks were indeed real. Because they didn't necessarily believe in the realness of the study, participants may have acted differently from how they would in day-to-day life. So if these are internal things, what's left for external validity? Well, external validity is all about the generalizability of results. A study's external validity is intrinsically connected with its internal validity, of course, and studies that are weak in one are often weak in the other. Let's look at three examples of external validity. Ecological validity refers to the environment in which research was conducted. Are the results from a laboratory study generalizable to indigenous tribes in the rainforest? Because the environmental factors are so different? Possibly not. This connects in with mundane realism. Researchers want their studies to reflect the real world as much as possible. As an aside, the real world looks very different depending on who you are and where you're studying. So a study of Amazonian tribes has a very different looking real world from a study of retail behaviours in an American shopping mall. Population validity is another type of external validity, this time focusing on participants. If all of the participants of a study are male, as was the case in Milgram's study, we have to ask ourselves if this is really generalizable to the wider population. Or is it just men? If all of the participants are in their 20s, as is often the case in research that uses university students as participants, can we generalize the results to people in their 50s or 60s? To ensure that studies have population validity, psychologists have to make a concerted effort when recruiting participants to make sure that they haven't succumbed to a sampling bias. A third example of external validity is historical validity. This considers a study's generalizability across time and eras in history. Continuing with the example of Milgram's work, this emerged out of the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust. There was a certain societal zeitgeist in the 1950s and 60s that simply doesn't match today's world. Can Milgram's experiments with a lab-coated authority figure really provide an insight into the way we are influenced by the bikini-sporting TikTokers of today? Possibly not. Though, if an influencer ever asks you to electrocute someone, it's probably best to unfollow them. Thank you so much for watching this video. Really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to Psychology Unlocked and hit that bell so that you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.